Hi, I'm Julie Ross,
And I'm Gregory Abbey.
and you're listening to the Parenting Horizons podcast.
Julie is a longtime parent educator and counselor.
And Greg is an actor, writer, and director, and more importantly, a parent just like you.
Through conversations covering a range of different topics, challenges, and roadblocks, we hope to give you a few of Julie's tools that might just help make parenting a little bit easier.
And look, nobody's perfect, and parenting is challenging to say the least. But with a few skills under our belts, we just might be able to be good enough parents and enjoy the journey and our children a little bit more in the process.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Parenting Horizons podcast. It is Greg, and of course, as always, my partner, Julie. Julie, how you feeling today?
I'm doing really great. How are you doing, Greg?
Now, I always do this check-in. Would you tell me if you weren't doing great? You always seem pretty great. You're pretty good? You're good? You feeling
I'm
good?
pretty good. I mean, yeah. I would I tell you if I wasn't doing great? I don't know. But
Well,
I'm
Julie
pretty
and I
good.
just talked about transitions a little bit because when we're recording this, it's the fall. Everyone's going back to school. And so I was, sharing that I feel a little overwhelmed with my three kids, one of which is out of college, one of which is in college. I have a 11th grader. And what did you say to me about transitions, Julie? What's your take?
Every year, for anybody who works on a school year calendar, right? And that doesn't mean summer is off. It just means that we consider fall to be the start of the year, right? And so that includes children, parents, educators. It's a 6 to 8 week transition every year for everybody. So if you've got kids who are in school, it's going to be bumpy for the first 6 to 8 weeks. It's going to be between Halloween and Thanksgiving before things kind of settle down. And same goes for the parents who have these kids. It's 6 to 8 weeks transition. And I know parents are like, yay, it's the fall, go back to school. I don't have to deal with you now. But there's a bumpy quality to the beginning of every year.
Great. So I just want our listeners to keep that in mind. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it makes sense that you are. Okay. All right. So let's get to our topic today, which is empowering teens. And we have a guest. Lucky to have him. His name is Kevin Baker. He is a certified professional life coach specializing in empowering teenagers. His mission is to nurture self-esteem, confidence, and resilience in young minds. Kevin, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to chat with you guys this morning. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. So before we kind of dive into our conversation, can you share with our audience a little bit of your journey and maybe how you got to where you are today and what you're doing, the work you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. My journey's been long. I've had 44 years of a bunch of different experiences and inputs, and a lot have been positive. There've been some negative ones, and I found myself in going to college in Boston, and I found myself in the music industry for a solid 15 years. It was a lot of fun, a great job, and then when I had my third child, I decided to pivot into real estate and be more local, so I could do the soccer games, the baseball games, do all the after school stuff, be the room parent in the classroom, and be present.
Right.
Pivoted into real estate, was very lucky to get into the market at a great time, developed some ability to have some financial freedom to, sort of do things that I enjoyed doing. Eventually ended up with too much time on my hands, got into a little bit of trouble, and sort of had a transformation a few years ago. And it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. I sort of was able to, take all the distractions, by quitting drinking alcohol, and take all the distractions sort of out of my life and focus and build awareness on my life and why we're really here on this planet. And I haven't really. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that one of the reasons I'm here is to have the greatest positive impact on as many people as possible while we're here on this planet. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I love that.
And so, I went through this career coaching program myself because I was like, what do I do with my time? How am I going to do this? How am I going to make this happen? So I came up with a checklist, different things based on my passions and my skills and my value add, and came up with life coaching. but specifically for teens and tweens, because I'm in the thick of it, with a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And it helps my personal growth, helps me to be a better father. But also, over the years, I have been blessed to have so many positive adult mentors,
Mm,
older, cousins, people, coaches in sports, people in the entertainment world and theater world, like in high school, when I got into technical direction and the theater program,
mm,
all those people throughout my life who gave me positive inputs and cheered me on and said, keep going. You're doing
right.
great. It gets hard, but you have the tools, and
Sure.
because you have those tools, you're going to be okay. And so I always sort of came back to that and relied on that.
And is there, in terms of life coaching, is there a reason in particular you focused on teens?
Mm.
I mean, was it something to do with your own kids, or like what led you kind of to that?
Well, it did have to do with my own kids. However, the coaching piece of it doesn't always work on my own kids. So
Right,
it's
right.
but it really is because I had the thought that because I had this transformation, and I had all these thoughts, that led me to this transformation. Is that what would it be like, if we could talk to the kiddos now, the young adults that from the age of 10, when life gets a little bit tricky, at that
Right.
age, and it gets trickier as you get older. If you can talk to them at that point and try and help them to get over whatever limiting beliefs they have at that point, whether it's I'm not good enough, or I'm never going to make it, or people are going to judge me, whatever the limiting
Mm,
belief is that's keeping them from being the best version of themselves. If you can reprogram that and rewire that at age of 10, just think of how
mm,
much of a more positive impact they're going to have throughout the course of their lives and all the things that they're going to be accomplished when they're not afraid of anything like that. So that's why I decided to start on them early. And what I'm learning now is that really it's great to talk to the kids, but we need to work on the parents.
Needless to say, that's been my business for the past 35 years.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I just found that out.
oh
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
no.
I mean, it feels like, I don't know. Julie can speak to that a little bit. That's something that's come up in episode after episode. Because I don't know, Julie, I feel like you talk about, and we've talked about, how before you need to look inward as a parent and figure out some of the things you need to work on as well, as opposed to like, it's my kid, it's my kid, it's my kid, right?
Mhm. Well, I mean, the reality is that people who work with the kids, like yourself, Kevin, and I started out being interested in working with the kids. The thing is, though, you can work with the kids, but then you're sending them back to the same home environment.
Mm, bingo.
And the parents are the boots on the ground. And so, what I can accomplish with a kid in an hour a week, let's say, is very different from what parents could accomplish with their kids because they have them pretty much 24/7. So that was a revelation for me when I was young and starting out. And I thought to myself, I need to be working with the parents here. I don't need to be doing play therapy with the kids. I need to be doing parenting work because they're the ones who make the difference in the children's lives ultimately.
Mm,
And fairly frequently, I'll get, a thank you from parents that I'm working with or have worked with, like, you changed my life. And I'm like, no, you changed your life. You're the one who did the
mm,
work. And,
yeah.
I'm glad you took my advice, but you're the one who did the work. So I think working with parents is really, really critical.
And you said you found that, Kevin. Like, are you working? Do you work specifically with the kids to start? Like, how does your practice work, or how your clients or your?
First I chat with the parents, and we talk about the results that they're looking to see, because when they come to me, they are, they're looking for more motivation from their young
Mm,
adult. They're looking for maybe they want them to make more friends, get better grades, participate in sports, or be more social, whatever it is, the results they're looking for. We talk through that, and it gives me some insight on what the parents are going to consider, a successful relationship. with me. So if I can
Right.
get them to make all these improvements and, make 3 more friends by the end of the school year, or, go from B's to A's, or from, D's to C's, whatever it is,
Mhm.
then we can sort of, quantify what success looks like. And so we always start there, because I want to be fully transparent and, on the same page with everybody. Is like, what do we want to accomplish?
Do you have like is there a I mean, you kind of mentioned all those things which makes sense, but in terms of your practice, is there something in particular that kind of gets repeated with parents that are coming to you that they want to work on with their kid, or is it kind of run the gamut?
It runs a gamut, but
Right.
it all comes down to emotions, and it all
Mm,
comes down to what they're feeling. And so first we have to realize, what's the emotion that the child's feeling, the student's feeling, and what is the thought that they're having that's leading to that emotion. And
right.
then, how do we take that thought, that limiting belief, that negative thought that, you're not good at math, or, you know,
Mm.
you can't make friends, or whatever the thought is. And then we change it.
If it's a limiting belief, so yeah, I'm totally following you. It almost sounds a little bit like cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, how do you change? Like, if you're working with a child that says like I stink at grades or I can't make any friends,
Mhm.
then what do you, Kevin, as the coach, kind of how do you work through that with the kid?
I mean, first we have to figure out if that's a fact. Really, do you really stink at math? Because 85, that's pretty good. If you were getting 55s, I'd say, yeah, you need to practice harder, but 85 is pretty good, and that's a great place, and we can easily, get you to A's from there.
Right.
Do you
So
find I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, do you find, Kevin, that some of these self-limiting thoughts are based on parental fear, and how parents are worried that their kids
Mm,
aren't gonna do well enough? Parents are
mm,
worried that their child isn't motivated. Parents are worried that their child doesn't have enough friends, and that gets communicated to the child as fact,
mm,
as opposed to, well, what is that based on? Because
mm.
it's a subtle communication on the on
Oh,
sometimes
very, yeah.
on the
It's very
parent's
subtle, and it's
part.
it's 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 matter of fact sometimes, and very, like, sometimes in passing. Limiting beliefs come from, 3 sources: parents, teachers, and preachers, right?
Mm.
Yeah,
Those are the people we listen to, and
yeah.
those are the people that give us inputs. And, the really interesting way that I began to think about it was that, let's just say that, and I believe that our brains are very similar to computers. And when we give our computer certain inputs, it can't differentiate between, what's fact and what's not fact sometimes. So, you get an input and you hear something, and it becomes a thought, and then you create that thought, and you create that pathway, that neural pathway in your mind with a negative thought. And every time you hear it, and every time you think it, it becomes a bigger thought. It becomes a
Right.
thought that you can have more readily and more automatically. And then it just becomes second nature. So once you have these inputs over and over and over again,
Hard to break
it's
out
hard to
of.
break out of it. It's no wonder why you might think that you can't get good grades, because your
Right.
parents are always asking you, telling you, like, why you really got to get good grades. What's going on? You need to do this. You need to do, and that anxiety and that worry, it builds up, and it bubbles up, and it creates these neural pathways that are negative. And then to undo that, to fix them, to change them into a more positive, more empowering and constructive thought, you have to do the work. You have to work hard at it. Like you're saying, like the parents did the work, right?
Mhm.
So changing the thought is like going to the gym, but for
Yes,
mental health, and you need to build the muscle.
that's
And
right.
so if you have a thought that, I can't do math, that thought needs to get changed. So, with practice, I can do this.
Right.
Mm.
And with
One
practice, I can be one of the best. And that's
yeah.
what we need to build the muscle of.
Yeah, I think the word that I hear parents say, or the phrase I hear parents say often, that I think really discourages kids, is, "My child isn't living up to their potential." And I
Mm,
Mm.
hate that word potential, because
mm,
there's no way to measure potential until maybe you're there. But they act as if it's like, as if you have a oil stick for a car. You dip it
Mm,
in, oh, it's not reached its full potential.
mm,
And so kids take that in and they're like, I'm a loser,
mm,
even if they're
mm,
getting an 85. And that to
Right.
mm.
me, is so damaging when parents say, you have to live up to your potential. Well, what about how well they're doing now?
Mm.
But Julie, is that what you say to the parents who come into your practice and say, they're not living up to their potential? Like, what do you say to them? I guess it becomes about, and a little bit what Kevin's talking about is like the language you use and how you're communicating with the child around these things, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, what I say to them is basically what I just said, except, maybe a little bit lengthier. I do more listening than talking, but I say, you don't how can you say that your child isn't living up to their potential? You don't know what that potential actually is. It could be
Mm,
limitless, but if you
Actually, it
say
is. Yeah.
right, but if
Yeah.
you say they're not living up to their potential, they feel like whatever effort they're putting in isn't good enough. So why try? Why try if
mm.
what I'm doing and getting an 85 or a 90 or a 95 isn't good enough? I don't know what is.
Yeah, it sounds defeating.
Mm.
I don't know. Kevin, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
I mean, there's so much to say. You know, there is no, living up to your potential. The kids are limitless. They
Exactly.
can do
Right.
anything. If you can think it, you can do it.
Yep.
And so actually by giving them like, you're not living up to your potential, actually gives them a ceiling, like gives them a limit. Like, oh, that's only my potential. Like
Yeah.
my potential is only to get a 95. Like,
Yeah.
no, I want my potential to be, I want to, run, an organization like this, and I want to do this with my life, and I want to do this. If the parents are saying that the kids aren't living up to their potential, then I think the parents haven't done a good enough job of helping the kids to explore their passions, to
Mhm.
find the
Mm.
thing that they're like really excited about, to realize like, oh, my potential is I can do anything.
Right. Exactly.
So can you talk a little bit more about this process when you're working with and it sounds like you're working mostly just with the child, or it sounds like you're maybe realizing like you need to bring the parents more into the fold, because
Yeah.
how do you talk about empowering, how to integrate these principles of, to foster growth and resilience in the kids. So if they come in with these limiting beliefs, are you just working with the kid to kind of break through that and kind of reality testing with him each week, or are you bringing the parents into the fold when you realize like, oh, some of this is coming from them? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, we bring the parents in the fold and talk to them about what they're seeing and how they're reacting,
Mm,
and talk to them about, how they're feeling about things. They're a lot of the problems that parents are, I think bringing upon themselves are the expectations that they have
mm,
about, who their kid should be, or what their kid should be, or how their kid should, how their kids should, be planning for their future. When every one of us has a vision in our subconscious of what our ideal life looks like what we're meant to do or be, and getting in the way of that is something that parents have, uh, even with the best intentions, a
right.
habit of getting in the way of the vision that their kid is having. And maybe the kid hasn't had it yet, so they're kind of like, floating, not really sure what their vision is. But that's what I do is I help bring that vision out. So we have a whole visioning process where we talk about, what their ideal life is going to look like. We give them some targets, and we give them some goals, and we give them some things to be excited about. And then once they have a target and a goal, they are motivated and they know where they're going. And then, parents can help be there to answer questions and be the adult with the fully developed frontal cortex that can help them with all the reasoning decisions, that have to happen. But often it's the expectations and the thoughts that the parents have and the fear of failure that cause them to get in the way of the kiddo's true path and like what that true journey should be. And it just creates some tension, and it creates anxiety, and it creates limiting beliefs that hold people back.
Yeah, it sounds like this is it's sounding very familiar in terms of the stuff that Julie and I have talked about in the past. Because Julie, it sounds like it's okay for the parents to have expectations, obviously, for the child, but it sounds like what Kevin is talking about is when it doesn't become a dialogue between the parent and child, right? So it sounds like, Kevin, you help the child to figure out to have agency, even if they need some help from the parent in getting there, but that they have a piece of where they're going. I don't know, Julie, does that make sense? Like your parents that come in and feel like I have these expectations, and you said like potential or things they should live up to, which is okay to have, but to me it feels like it's got to be in conversation with the child. And Kevin, it sounds like that's what you do, is to help the child, find like, what do you want? What are you passionate about? What are you looking for? I don't know. Does that make sense, Julie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately parenting at its best or most effective is a dialogue between parent and child, not a lecture from a teacher to a student. And I think for a variety of reasons, a lot of parents come into this with these kind of expectations. They didn't, maybe when they were growing up, they wanted to be a soccer player. So they are pushing their kid who trips over their own feet to be a soccer player, and then reprimanding them when they're not living up to a potential star soccer player status or whatever. So I think in addition to dialoguing and really listening to kids, and it sounds like Coach Kevin does that. He listens to the kid, and everybody needs to be listened to. But parents, as Kevin said, despite their best intentions, often put up blocks in the communication between parent and child. And then that results in the parents not only not listening, but not being able to guide, because guidance comes first from listening and figuring out, what the kid has to say. So, I mean, as you know, Greg, I'm all about the skill of listening actively, of not jumping in with advice or judgment or criticism or
Prescriptive, like do
prescriptive.
this. Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah. And, it changes a little with age, but certainly by the time they're tweens and teens, things have to be less prescriptive and have to be more open and more curious. We have to lean in as parents with curiosity about what our children are interested in. I remember when my daughter was, well, I guess all her life, she was very interested in horseback riding. Now, I live in New York City, and that would have been a very expensive proposition. People do it here, but we never put her on horseback. She got to the point where she was applying for college. She said, "I only want to go someplace where there's an equestrian team." And I thought to myself, you've been on horseback maybe 5 times in your whole life, and you wanna go to a college that has an equestrian team? But I zippied the lippy, which is one of my techniques that I teach. I zippied the lippy and I said, "Hey, listen, go for it." Well, do you know she went to Northwestern and got on the equestrian team and won in her category numerous times, because
Hmm.
I didn't shut it down. I didn't say, "Don't be dumb." You haven't ridden horses before. You're competing against all these people who have gone to shows, flown back and forth to shows in, Florida and this kind of thing, and have had extensive training. But I didn't say that, because I can say it in my mind, but I didn't say it
Hmm.
to her. And thus, she wasn't limited. She now teaches neurodivergent kids on horseback. Not
Wow.
horseback riding, but as a therapeutic process. I mean,
Sure.
listen.
At what age did she have that vision?
Oh, from the age of 3, she would pretend to
Mm.
be riding horses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she'd get a
It was what
pillow
she's
and
supposed
she'd
to
be
do.
like, and
Yeah.
that's what
That's what she's
that
supposed to do.
it was so, exactly, you know, or the carousel horses, you know. Oh,
Mhm.
she loved the carousel, you know.
Yeah, and Kevin, it sounds like that's what you're saying you're trying to key into and then give them goals to get to, but it sounds like Kevin, what you start with is helping them find like what is your
Mm.
vision, what is your passion, which is not. I mean, not every kid knows that, but is that kind of how it works? So you start at that place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's well, after we build rapport. You know, you can't just like jump
Right,
into a
right.
conversation with
Yeah.
Jump in.
somebody, but you know, but that
What do you want to do with your
what do you
life,
want to do?
kid?
Yeah, you can do all these things. I mean, there's a million things you could do anything. So what do you want to do? Yeah, you know, like that's
A lot.
you know
It's a
we
lot.
we you know we that's like one of the things is I have this uncanny ability to like make friends with the kids, you know,
Which
and
is great.
I you know and it's in part because of my own kids because you know we play video games like we connect over that stuff like we're watching movies we're
Right.
like you know talking about what's out there with the skibbity and you know and who's sus and who's capping and you know it's all this stuff and we
Right.
laugh about it, you know, and that's once we build the rapport, you know, then things can like open up and we can have the conversations about vision and you know when you have a trusted you know friend or mentor or coach or whoever it is, those conversations just get easier.
What about and both of you guys can speak to this. What about parents or teens both that are struggle with connecting with each other,
Mm.
which is kind of classic because it's this, Julie's talked about this a lot. There's kind of a natural separation that goes on, but for parents that don't feel as connected to their teens or wish that they were more connected so they could talk through some more of this stuff for them, I'd be curious to hear you both talk about how do you foster that a little bit? I mean, Kevin, you just talked about, you play video games with your kids or you watch movies. Is it about finding like, you know, my daughter thinks I'm annoying every second. Where can I find some common ground where we can connect? Like, Kevin, what do you do when parents say that? Like, they won't talk to me, which is, again, like, it's kind of, there is a natural progression where your teen isn't supposed to be your best friend necessarily.
Hmm.
But for parents and teens that want to foster more connection,
Hmm. Yeah, I think
I'd love to hear you both speak to that. Kevin first and then Julie.
you know building the awareness as a parent of the signs and signals that your kiddo is giving off, not only listening to what they have to say very actively as Julie pointed out, but also you know reading their body language and
Mm,
knowing when you know when they're you know maybe in need of some conversation or you know have something they want to get off their chest, you know just allowing them an outlet to you know ask them an open-ended question and have them go off, you know, have them go off and answer it and listen and pay attention. And then when they are, you know, when they're ready and if they ask for your advice, you know, you can give it. But
right.
you know, my method is to really just actively listen deeply and pull out those key words and don't think about what you're going to say next. Just listen and that will give you a reference point and a great way to figure out how you're next going to connect because it's different for everybody. But you know, in my case, you know, sitting down and if my kiddo is playing a video game, like sitting down and asking him questions about it and figuring out like how are we going to win? Like, oh, can I play? You know,
Mm.
how can we just spend some time together? You know, and feel like we care and feel like you know that thing, even though it might not interest me, that's the thing that interests your kid. So getting involved with the thing that your kid's curious about or the is interested in is a great way to connect.
Yeah, yeah, meeting them where they are.
Mm.
Julie, do you want to add anything to that? Like, do you have parents that come to you and just say they won't talk to me, I can't connect with them? Is that something you get?
Oh, every parent of every teen in the universe comes to me and says that pretty much. But Kevin's
But it is a
absolutely,
natural it's a natural before you talk
yeah.
about how to get it, it is natural though,
Mm.
right? Because there is a natural separation that's supposed to be going on. When would you say that?
Well,
Early teens? Like, when does that begin?
yeah.
So they individuate.
Yeah, so the developmental drives to individuate and differentiate. So that's being an individual, separate and apart from one's parents, and to differentiate, to be different from one's parents, start in tweenhood, which is, 9, 10, it depends on the kid. But those are developmental drives that are as deep as the developmental drives that force a baby to learn to walk, right?
Mm.
We don't say, okay, let's see what the schedule is. Up and at 'em, we're going to learn walking today. It's a deep developmental drive, a need that they have. And the need is really no different in terms of when we talk about individuation and differentiation in the tween years. It's a need to form your own community, ultimately. People who are like-minded, people who can answer some of the hard questions in our lives, like, who am I separate and apart from my parents? And am I competent outside of the family sphere? And am I lovable by someone other than my parents? These are human needs. We all have to answer those questions at some point during our lives. So that process really begins in tweenhood, where they're looking outside for their affirmation, for their kudos, for the corrections, even from peers. So I think what Kevin said was absolutely correct, that it all comes from listening. And I think some of the kind of natural instincts that we have with babies would serve us well to reignite them. So, when your child becomes interested in trains, what do? We sit on the
We
floor
buy a bunch of
and we
trains, right?
buy a bunch of
Exactly.
trains and we sit
Mhm.
and we play trains with them. Now,
Hmm.
does it matter if I have any interest at all in trains as a parent? It really doesn't, because it's their interest. We have to connect in their world. As they grow, and I would say this is a little unfortunate in our day and age with technology, but it is about video games. It is about trying to connect over, what does this mean to you? What does it mean to get 14 gold? Or, it's been a long time since I've been in that world, because my kids are both over 30.
Sure.
But,
Yeah, of course.
what does it mean? And I'm curious about that. And how do you do it? And as Kevin said, can I play?
Right.
They all our lives we play. It's just how we play changes. So when we can
Hmm.
connect as parents with our children in how they play, that brings us closer together.
Right. Yeah, I keep going, Kevin. I'm getting the sense it's for your work sounds a lot about, especially if they have these limiting beliefs. It's to get through those. It sounds like you first have to understand with that child, like, what it is they're interested in, what their passion is, where they might want to go. Right? I mean, it sounds kind of like that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, it's building the rapport, and then it's trying to figure out, why are they thinking about something in a way that is, negative or deconstructive, or holding them back, when they could think about it sort of a completely opposite way
Right.
and be, propelled in a more positive direction.
Right, and I take it, like, can you talk a little bit about some of the success stories you've seen? Like, how does that manifest? It probably depends on the kid too, in
Mhm.
terms of a time. It probably, I mean, there must be so many elements, like, what's the relationship of the kid to the parents? What's the relationship in
Oh,
school?
yeah,
But
everybody's different. Yeah, everybody's different. Everybody's had different inputs throughout their entire life. And, every time that we get a piece of information coming in, whether it's through our eyes or ears or nose or taste or touch, that input goes in and gets computed based on our belief system and our values, that our families taught to us, and our character traits. And so everybody's different in the way they perceive things. What I try and figure out is, what is the negative thought that they're having, and what part of their belief system
mm,
gave them that negative perception, and then, how
mm.
do we change the belief to give you a more positive perception of what's happening? It's a reframe. everything.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So some of the things, I was just on a call yesterday, and the kiddo, he was actually, 16, just got his license. His limiting belief was that he's having a tough time socially connecting and making friends. And his limiting belief, come to find out, it is not an uncommon one. It's that people are going to judge me, and that they're going to judge
Mm,
me by the things I say and the things I wear, and how I react. And I said, well, first off, like, is that a fact that they're going to judge you?
right, right.
Because in my experience, people in their own minds are really just thinking about themselves. Well, they're worried about what they're going to say, and they're worried about what they're wearing, and they're
Right, you
really
give
not
people
worried about
so
you.
we all do it.
Yeah, we all do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
you give people I do I you that's at any age,
yeah.
you give people so much power, and the thing is, like, it's almost self-centered in a way to feel that way, because the truth is,
They
like,
don't care about you.
people aren't.
No,
Yeah, yeah,
no.
they're dealing with their own
Yeah.
internal strife,
And
right?
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and it looks to me like, dude, you got a pretty cool shirt on. And the conversation that you and I are having, I feel like I'm talking with a 25-year-old. So, you're coming off really mature. And if I was another 16-year-old talking to you, like, I'd be pretty impressed.
Yeah, so it sounds like sort of giving them confidence to kinda move through those
Yeah.
situations.
It's like what you're telling me is not a fact.
Right, right.
So instead of you letting your mind tell you a lie that people are judging you, why don't you tell your mind to tell you that if they're judging me, then they must think I'm pretty cool because I have this, I have this, and I have this, and I'm great.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's a lot about checking in with yourself to kind of like that reality testing to be like, is this
Yeah.
true? So I want to touch on, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one final topic, which you can both kind of speak to, the digital world, which Julie and I, over a lot of couple of years of doing this, that comes up in different ways. And you both can speak to this. And maybe Kevin, we can start with you. So how do you help teenagers cultivate mindfulness, self-awareness, healthy habits around this stuff? And it
Mm,
sounds like you have kids that I mean, I struggle with that as an adult. I
mm.
struggle with my own, like, being on Instagram, social media. Like, this is not new. This is, permeated more than ever the child's life. So is there a way that you talk about it with the kid to kind of have a more healthy attitude about it? Or like, how do you approach that piece?
Yeah, I mean, I start off by, seeing how they sort of utilize digital world, like what are they
Mm,
really into? Because not everybody's playing Fortnite, not everybody's
right.
on social media and TikTok and all that. So, first we have to really figure out like, well, how deep are you? And then I think the most important thing that we talk about is how, it's not reality and how
Mm.
it's not true. And really this is just all for entertainment value. And, they're just trying to
You mean this you mean the stuff they're
on
seeing
social media.
potentially?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right,
Just,
right, right, right.
all the yeah, everything they're seeing on social media that gives them, the FOMO, when they see like the top percent of people's lives and they think that's reality. And then all of a sudden, like they're never going to achieve that. They're never going to make it. And that sort of starts like the negative thought process there. So pointing out to them that, hey, this isn't reality. This YouTube short that you just watched and then you scrolled over in about 10 seconds, that took them 4 days to edit. And, at the end of it, they're really just trying to sell you this thing. So, it's okay, to like that. Like I understand why it's attractive to you. Especially because they're short, they're to the point. Some of them are funny. They're certainly entertaining. But the big advantage of you guys growing up in this amazingly fast and complex digital world is that now you have all these tools that you can use to be productive and you have use them to your benefit. So, to build your uh, you know, online portfolio if you want to be an art illustrator, to, record your sports highlights, and put them out there, in a way that, if you want to get recruited, to be a star, like let's build your brand and your profile and show everybody how great you are, like in real life.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's definitely benefits to it as well.
Yeah.
What about you, Julie? I mean, because all parents struggle with this idea of
Yeah.
phone use and being on the social media, and I
Yeah.
don't know, what do you
Well,
it's a big one.
it is a big
How do
one.
you it is, like, how do you decide, like, what is a healthy relationship with this stuff?
Well, I mean, listen, the biggest lamentation I hear from parents is about my kids on scrolling all the time on their
Mm,
phone at the dinner table, et cetera, et cetera. And part of the problem that I have encountered in terms of counseling parents around this is by the time the parents are thinking about setting boundaries, the train has left the station
Right.
because, kids who are 10, 11, 12, and up, obviously, have a million ways around whatever limits parents want to set. They're very wily. They know exactly how to either turn Wi-Fi back on or get a hotspot on their phone, or so when parents are trying to literally control this, there really
It's
is
not happening.
it can't happen. The train left the station a long time ago. And the marketers, for these devices know exactly what they're doing. They know how to make it easier for kids to be, addicted or online all the time. So, I don't start there. I don't start with the control. I When parents try to control it, I'm telling you 100% of the time it backfires. The screaming matches, the
The
the put
punishments.
well, and the kids, the parent takes the phone, the kid goes and gets the phone, stays up all night until the parent falls asleep, and then gets the phone. It's just it's becomes very chaotic very quickly. So my thought process, and this is a core belief that I have, is that after a certain age, we can't control our kids. We can't. Your average 16-year-old, 17 they'll just walk out. You can say you're grounded. They're not gonna be grounded. They're gonna walk out. So, instead of thinking about control, we have to think about building relationship with them. How do we build a relationship with this kid? And again, as Kevin and I have both said, it's through listening and really actively listening. Because when we have a solid relationship, we have something more important, more valuable, more powerful than control. We have influence. And that
Right.
allows us to be curious about, what are you doing when you're scrolling on your phone? Like, what's fascinating about it? And I suspect one of the reasons that Kevin is successful is that they don't feel criticized by Kevin in the same way they feel criticized by their parents. Because there's that hidden, I can't believe you, you're a loser. Why are you, that the parents are, why are you on your phone all the time? What's wrong with you? And of course, that's only going to generate more interest in being on the phone. But Kevin is able to come in, and I think parents can adjust their mindset to do this, to be curious about it. Like, well, what is it that, that you find so fascinating about TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat or, all of those things that they're on today. Um, and then, and you wouldn't say this to a child, but how can you use your powers for good instead of for evil? How can you use this instrument to further what you want to do, to learn something? How can it work for you as opposed to you working for it?
Well, and I think what you're both saying is, like, this kind of keeps coming up in this conversation, is I think if it's more of a collaboration between parent and child as opposed to, like, I'm gonna dictate how this goes, it just sounds like, and I love that too, Julie, it's more, you'll have some influence on your values.
Yeah.
If you can have a conversation about where they're at with it, why, all the things you both said, why, the why, and, and start there with the curiosity, and then maybe you can come up with something together. I mean, this is the thing that always seems to come up. Not that it always works, but that if you have a relationship with the child around the thing, as opposed to try to dictate what they should do, it seems like you might have a better chance to impart your values around it. I guess.
I believe so.
Right? I don't know.
I
Yeah.
believe so, yes.
Well, Kevin, this has been great. We've had a really expansive conversation. Obviously, we do this with all of our guests. If you can, we like to take this conversation and say to you, if the parents listen to this conversation, or a teen, I think we mostly have parents though. Is there one idea? Is there one thing in particular you would want a parent to take away and hold on to if they have a kid that's struggling with any of this stuff? Like, if you can, like, is there one idea for you that in your practice, in your work, that you feel is the most important thing to keep top of mind?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the number one thing, and if I'm talking to parents, the number one thing is to, well, I have three rules. If it's
Sure.
okay,
Let's
I'll
hear
go through
'em.
the whole thing.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
All the expectations that you have about, the future of your child, I think that you should throw them out the window.
Hmm.
I think throw the expectations out the window. Practice patience and love. And when your child makes you feel upset or overwhelmed or frustrated, and you are about to say something or do something that is not going to benefit your relationship, pause and breathe and walk away. And you will find that your child will come to you and do the thing that you want them to do.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great. And, meet them where they are. That's Zippy the Lippy. Julie, you talk about that all
Zippy
the
the Lippy.
time.
That's right. I love that.
Yeah, relate, because it really is, at the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
about the relationship.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
Kevin, this has been great.
Yeah,
Really
thank you.
appreciate you coming on. Again, our guest is Kevin Baker. He is a certified professional life coach specializing in empowering teenagers. Kevin, if someone wants to find you, work with you, like, how do they go about doing that?
They can find me at lifecoachkevin.com or on Instagram at lifecoachkevin or on Facebook at Teen Life Coach.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. We really appreciate
Thank you guys.
being
It's
here
been a
today.
pleasure. Great talking with you. We'll do it again sometime.
Thanks for listening to the Parenting Horizons podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share with your family and friends. And if you'd like to hear more about Julie's work, join one of her parenting groups, or see about individual counseling, please visit parentinghorizons.com. Or you can email Julie at julie.ross@parentinghorizons.com.
We'll see you next time.